your oyster, and then you do some operational stuff because people kind of expect that. So I feel like that's a good check mark in your column. And so I think you're on the right path. But if you're looking for more impact, maybe I can start talking about our experience, right? So just to answer your question, in 2021, we left with a few Nvidia guys to start our firm. And the genesis of the idea was really the Transformers paper in 2018, 2019. And we knew that natural language was going to be a significant innovation. That thesis is definitely proven true because shortly after that, end of 2021, 2022, it's ChatGPT, generative models really took off. You know about all that. Yeah, so what was our idea? So I think that's your key. So we actually, there's a good figure in the book. That's why I brought it, not necessarily as a prop, but this is stuff since you must have done some computer science, right?
Yeah, minor.
Yeah, you minor, right?
Yeah.
So you've seen these charts on traditional software development versus ML software development. So they're quite, instead of handcrafting a lot of code, did you do that at Susquehanna? Did you feel like you were coding up features or?
Yeah, but more like not object-oriented, but functional programming, I'd say. So like R as opposed to Java and building large. Although at Ellington, I was involved in larger object-oriented code base. So yeah, that's your question.
Right. I mean, functional can become object-oriented, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, these things you're eating up a lot of the code with language models, with models, right? And now what we're doing is an agentic approach. Of course, you well know that you have to provision a lot of GPU hardware, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that's critical is that you need a lot of data sources, right? So we're casting around ideas, and we're a small, scrappy player. We didn't really want to pay for a lot of data set. We have friends that entered into various spaces where they had to partner with large organizations, and then that kind of limits what you can do. I'm sure you can understand that kind of organizational bureaucracy, right? So my brother, who worked at E-Trade, the company he was at got acquired by E-Trade. He's always been in the financial space. I've always been in the engineering space, and he mentioned that there's actually a type of investing that uses a lot of natural language. So you're probably familiar with this, right? You're familiar with value investing, intrinsic value investing, right? What have you ever studied it?
No, I've heard of it. It's been a while since I've been in finance, so yeah. You
sure.
might have to remind me, yeah.
Although you're still kind of in finance, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But on a more kind of operational level.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I guess the key is, if you look into it, it's a very strange algorithm, right? So one of the things that we learned in our diligence is that when some of the large firms like Renaissance, they tried to start a value fund. So a value fund, their fund was called Institutional Equities Fund, Renaissance Institute, and they tried to start about 15 years ago. It didn't do very well. The idea is that they try to invest like humans do, like some of the best managers. Do you have a favorite manager? These studies?
I do actually, yeah. She was nice. I liked her.
Who?
I'm sorry, favorite personal work manager?
No.
Fund manager.
Fund manager. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Who do you?
I'll go with Ray Dalio.
You like Ray? Okay. My partner is a Bridgewater guy. So
Nice.
Yeah. People like
an
Ray.
Interesting interview experience that I had with them.
Oh, you interviewed at Bridgewater.
I did.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the interview process?
I know of the firm. It's very peculiar, but no, not in particular.
So funny. The first interview is a group interview, and they ask philosophical questions, I guess.
Okay.
And that's it. It's nothing about investing. It's just like, if someone steals your wallet and you know who did it, what are you gonna do? Something like that, you know.
Right.
And then eventually the conversation goes into categorical, whatever, someone's categorical comparison, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. Very morally based.
I don't know what they're assessing there, but I didn't get the job. So.
Oh no, fair enough. I think they were very peculiar, and I wouldn't take that as a signal necessarily of they select for
Ken Griffin. That's Citadel, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I like what they've done at Citadel. I'll change my answer to Ken Griffin. You know?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I like what he's done too, because being a market maker. So there's also some hints that a lot of people say hold up Renaissance as the pinnacle of machine learning, and we actually think, based on our diligence, that a lot of what they do is they sell a pricing model to UBS, or I believe it was Credit Suisse, one of those. And so they're essentially functioning as a market maker also, right? And so when you have their Renaissance and also Citadel are famous for durable long-term returns year after year that are decoupled from the market, and that's sort of what you do as a market maker, right? So that's not. We didn't want to tackle that problem because that's kind of there's entrenched players. If you're starting a new firm, you usually want to, in technology, you want to create a new division or use capability that has never been possible before, right? So my brother, he holds up people like Warren Buffett, right? I think Warren Buffett is the most famous example of someone. And if you read about what he does, it's very strange. All he does is he reads 10K and 10Qs all day long. So he's reading filings, he's reading reports, he's sprinkling in a little bit of newspaper and media, which is essentially 8Ks. And using financial metrics, he's using that to make his investments, right? So yeah, I don't want to belabor kind of what we're doing, because this is not meant to be a pitch. Actually, we're meant to. I think the exercise I would have is, if you were going to architect a new financial firm, knowing the tools that you have now, you're a smart guy. I'm sure if you haven't been working in software, how would you do it? And I can sort of. You can use me as a springboard, really, because I've been on the path for 6 years, and I could sort of tell you in real time. But there's limited value in me kind of, guiding.
I like Buffett's approach.
Yeah.
And maybe there's opportunity for AI there. I don't know. I'm wondering how this dovetails into like applying AI, but that is an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Because I have been listening to a lot. Have you heard of the Founders podcast?
Who is that? That is, I think I have, but there's so many to track of these days. I like BG2. BG2 is all right.
BG2.
Bill Gurley and Brad. His last name, blanking on. But yeah.
BG2. Okay.
Yeah.
I love Founders with Thoughts.
Founders. Is that
David Senra?
Okay.
He's the host. You might like it, but he has a lot on Warren Buffett, and so I've been listening to a lot about shareholder letters. It's very dense and rich with information, so that's what I appreciate. But anyway, yeah. I'm familiar with Buffett's style and approach. So your question was, if I were to engineer like a trading firm or like an investment firm, how would I do it? I mean, yeah, like you said, there's a value investing, and there's like purely quantitative, and probably some kind of spectrum between the two. Ideally, I'd probably have arms that deal in both.
Right.
I come from a quantitative investing background at Susquehanna and at Ellington, but I'm growing.
And what was your experience? How did you feel about that on a more qualitative basis? Like, did you feel like your returns were durable? Did you feel like that's the sort of business you want to build as a quantitative firm in the vein of Susquehanna, or maybe just like a commodities firm where you're really driven by pricing data, right? How did you think about that?
So at Ellington, it was super theoretical. So I felt very, and especially as a junior trader, like I didn't have any operational decisions of like a buy or sell.
Sure.
But I was working on I was in the mortgage-backed securities division, and I was working on a big housing model. So literally, almost completely divorced from actual trading MBSs. It was like, can we predict the Case-Shiller index, for example? I found it fascinating.
Oh wow! Yeah.
It was also very theoretical, and probably somehow tied to the guys on the floor. Although I didn't really see too much of that. Susquehanna is very interesting. I mean, it's a really big organization. So I was on options equities, and a lot of it is like managing risk and position. I don't know if you're familiar with the culture there, but it's very poker oriented. Have you heard of that?
That's a common theme in financial firms, so
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. We have a little section on poker in the book
so
too.
they almost treat it like a poker game, and a lot of it is managing risk. A lot of it is thinking in terms of like cards on a table, more or less, and like what's your first and second degree, like and so on. What's your delta and gamma? I think that's what it is.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Those are options. Greeks they call them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Gotta know your Greeks, of course.
Yeah.
And how to estimate them.
How did I like it? I mean, it's fine. As I grow older, I just really appreciate almost like feels like an old school way of investing, which is the Buffett value investing, as opposed to these high-powered, high-tech, like high-frequency trading. It seems a little bit more new school. I don't know. I might lean more towards the former.
Yeah.
The value side.
If I could summarize, it seems like that Bridgewater exercise, the value, the philosophy of your investing matters to you, right? So similarly for us, I think that was the case, where you look at what's the value of finance, right? And a lot of the value is one, if you think about how it's like allocating capital where it's needed, right? And I think when you're working in development, that's very concrete. Like, oh, we funded this, we got the financing to break ground and build the data center, right? So that's very concrete, and that's probably one of the best uses of finance. When you work in public markets, it feels a little divorced from that. But yet, I think the nice thing about value investing is, in the long term, you've heard this quote: "Market is in the short term, it's a voting machine; in the long term, it's a weighing machine." So that function is still there, and so our thought was, how can we better do that function? And that's really what humans are doing. The other aspect of it is, if you're running a pure ML firm, and there's a lot of sentiment involved, right? So in the short term, if you look at it, I'm sure a lot of these quantitative firms, a lot of it is about manipulating sentiment, right? So you'll see something like a buy-side bank will raise their target, and they'll shift markets, right? And that's all sentiment. That's not a durable, to us that doesn't seem like a durable advantage. Like, you can capture that, and part of the basis of the technology we're building is to better, the thing about value investing is it's hard. So you can't, Buffett literally spends 10 hours a day reading, and he's been doing this for over 50 years. I'm not, part of me is saying, and we've tried this ourselves. Literally, if you want a good exercise and you have a lot of free time, go read the earning call transcripts and the 10Ks of every S&P 500, every large cap company. That'll be the best. In my opinion, it'll far exceed any MBA that you'll ever do. Just doing it. And that's kind of what Buffett has said. He's like, it builds up, right? That knowledge. You'll get your finger on the pulse. The problem is, even having done that for a quarter or two, that's no way to live your life. And I'm going to be very respectful of Buffett, but it's and I appreciate, of course, everybody respects what he's done, and he deserves all the accolades, right, that he's received. Some part of me is like, living a good life. I think you and I have studied that, having gone to elite institutions, right? That it falls short of our idea of living a good life. And so at the same point, we went to build a technology that made this easier for people, right? And a lot of it is about education, right? This valuations, for instance, there's a good McKinsey book. It's called Valuation. That's basically the textbook of valuation. So, and it all starts from like the DCF analysis. I'm sure you're aware of, right? And it's like, how do you build a good DCF analysis? What are the market mechanics? So markets are very idiosyncratic. Where are the areas where markets can fail? What markets are not perfect, or else you wouldn't have people like Buffett. And even if you do the statistics on Buffett, essentially his argument is like, there's this critique, which is, if you flip a coin 100 times, just by pure chance, there's going to be someone like Buffett. And Buffett's like, no, you need to look at the conditional probability. It's like, if you look at the number of investors, this is like the Bayes rule. I'm sure you appreciate Bayes rule, right? One of the most important, right, formulas in investing. If you look at the Bayes rule, like the people that outperform the market, out of a disproportionate amount of them are belong to this value investing philosophy, right? So that's kind of how we reasoned about it.
So, what is the conditional probability associated with, like, saying that Buffett is a special case? Like, what's the condition?
It's not so. Almost everybody who outperforms the markets as managers. So you can name any number of them, right? Like Duquesne, Bill Ackman, all those. They all look up to Buffett, right? So instead of having,
I see.
Yeah. It's like instead of having a 1 in 1,000 chance of someone outperforming the market by this much, if you give the prior, the prior you estimate them. If you give the prior that they're a value investor,
right?
Maybe it's a 1 in 20 chance, as opposed to a 1 in 1,000. So just by that's how you identify signal, right? So there's some signal there, and I think that's been widely appreciated now. So our thrust is how can you better do that process, right? Yeah, does that make sense?
It does, yeah. So, are there any specific applications of AI that you use? I'm guessing towards value investing, 10K's application to like analyzing transcripts?
Yeah, so first of all, I would say we found a lot more signal in earning call transcripts. The reason why is there's earning call transcripts are protected under the 1995 Safe Harbor Law. So I'm sure you've encountered this in the U.S. The 10Ks and the 10Qs, they were kind of corrupted or they were degraded by lawyers, right? So you look at any market movement, any public company almost always gets sued for anything they do. So the 10K and the 10Qs, it's just like, I would say they're about 95% disclaimer content and 5%. And of course you can do things like extract the MD&A and do things like that, and we've done that and do some feature engineering. The earning call transcripts, it lets them speak at, and Buffett has even commented about this, is like actually by like guaranteeing people that they won't be prosecuted, they actually speak more freely, even though they can still lie, right? They can essentially lie if they want to. Most business operators know that's no way to run a business. If you're lying to your investors, that's just in general no way to run a business, right? Yeah. So I would say the first implementation is very much quantitative. Like our original DNA, I would say, is quantitative, is to run a ML process. So are you familiar with like kind of like machine learning setup, what you need to do?
Yeah. Generally.
Yeah, like training, validation, tests. So set that up. And this dovetails well with your Ellington management. So we train a model for each financial metric. So it's not, as you point out, like if you're looking at housing, you're going to look at Case-Shiller. By the way, I met Case. I went to Yale for grad school, so I met Shiller. Nice. Very cool. Yeah, he's a great guy. Super cool guy. Yeah, so you build a model just for Case-Shiller, right? Of course you should do that, right? So, we build a model for free cash flow yield, right? Of course you should do that. So that was one of our systems. I guess, can you deduce what are some of the limitations of that?
Like intercorrelation between the models or something?
Sure, yeah. Yes, I think that's definitely a problem. So, this what I learned from Ray Dalio is you should, and also I think predating Ray is Charlie Munger. He said you want multiple independent models, right? And so these models are going to be correlated, right? I would say that was one. Yeah, so we were speaking with the Xiaomi co-founder last week, and he's a super sharp guy. He picked up on this right away. He's like, the way so it's a time series problem. So this is your question. You asked, how do you approach time series? Right. So this is why I was listening to you. While I was fumbling around. You pulled on all the right threads, right? In time series, when you set up that, you have to set up something called a forward chaining model. So a forward chaining model means you have to withhold the last data point in order to force your model to really be predictive in the way that you want it to be. Does that make sense? Sure. You want it to predict in the future, right? However, by doing that, so what we do is we withhold it in our validation, and we show it only during validation, only during tests, right? And even if you want to be even more careful, you want to withhold 2 time periods: one during validation, 2 during validation, and 1 during test. You understand that technical? You gotta protect your test set. This is if you get into the weeds of machine learning, you protect your test set like your life depends on it, and that's all about. When we look at models, we evaluate different language models. Like the DeepSeek model is really quite good, and other ones that come out, like we were benchmarking XO1, which is this LG model, is claiming it's so much better and everything, and we were just like no, we're just like no. And this is operational stuff, right? You got to do some operational stuff.
Yeah.
So but what is that? The weakness of that, right? Is you're always withholding data. You're kind of always one step behind. So I think those are two key points. 1, the correlation, and 2, the test, the kind of like the time withholding barrier. So how would you address those? Yeah.
I haven't thought about this in such a long time.
No, yeah.
So what I'm doing, yeah.
But it's related. Yeah, it's related to does in our I think Warren Buffett is quite guarded on how he does his investing. But I think a lot of other ones are not as guarded. For instance, you look at Stanley, you look at Druckenmiller, and other ones in Active. Like how do they invest? I guess and even like Kathy Woods, I think maybe you're kind of like talking more tech investing. And how would you invest? You wouldn't like read every 10K and then like look at every financial, like it's just, that's not a very human-like approach, right? How does like a human invest, right? Yeah.
A lot. Well, are you asking?
Yeah. No, I'm opening it up, I guess.
Oh, sure. I would guess. Yeah. Well, me personally, I would probably do the inefficient way of like reading more of the 10Ks in the earnings call. However, I think a lot of people invest in. A lot of it's kind of like what the hot kind of topic is.
Yeah. But even the meme investing, I would say there's still even we would put that under, and even Ackman or whoever, what have you. It's called and you've worked in investment now. I guess once you start working with clients more, is they'll ask you, what is your philosophy, right? But more to double click on that is, what is your thesis?
Yeah.
So it's thesis-driven, right? And you can be very unprofessional and you say, "Oh, I think Tesla is a hot stock," and so that's a purely sentiment-based approach, which can be effective, right? It can be effective, but so one is a lot of these investors have a thesis-based approach, right? And 2, there can be more professional type of theses that you can generate, ones that can convince investors. And on a philosophy basis, how do they know that your engine of thesis generation is durable? And that's sort of, so 1 is how do you generate these theses, and there's sort of a meta approach, is your philosophy such that you generate those theses is linked and logical, right?
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. I'm trying to connect that with how your fund uses AI to kind of validate these theses, or see if, okay, so that's what it. So
I'm happy to answer that.
Oh yeah. So you use AI to somehow assess a thesis and see if it's validated in market data or something. That's interesting.
Yeah. So one of the now we're really spilling the tea here. One of the ways I also would. I don't want to deprive you of also thinking through the questions yourself.
Sure.
Because that's like the value.
I agree, yeah.
And I know you're a smart guy.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've thought about any sort of like quant or like
quant
work or just like general kind of market investing, I would say. So I'm a little bit slow here.
No. I know. There's a lot for the morning. I'm gonna take a drink of my beverage. So.
Well, I mean, I would just guess right off the bat. There's probably like. Okay, so one fun thesis could be like applying in underrepresented startups. So like startups with underrepresented founders. So that's just obviously a very qualitative thesis or something.
Yeah, I like it. It's a contrarian. Yeah, it's like a contrarian base. Basically,
and that I think is something you can test, and AI can kind of validate that.
Yeah, I think that's a great one, right? Exactly. That's like a great generation of a thesis that is very market related, so it has a market component. Why is it undervalued? It's because, I'll be honest with you, and we studied this. This market is basically, markets are people, right? I feel like that senator, that Massachusetts senator, it's like corporations are people. Markets are people, though, aggregated with different characteristics, of course, with the right disclaimers. And who are these people? Who are the allocators? Be honest, they're basically rich guys, rich men, right? And they tend to discount perhaps like underrepresented co-founders. So I think that you've quite intuitively identified something that's very market oriented, that's contrarian. I think that's another part. Oftentimes you want a thesis to be contrarian, right? And then the third part is what is the philosophy? Further is like you kind of have this DEI bent, right? Which is going to be tricky to play with, but nevertheless, just in sort of this analysis mode that's there, right? So yeah, I think that's a sterling case of a thesis, right? It's perfectly germane. What we looked at is some of the we've been inspired, and you get inspired by a conference like this, is one of the benchmarks that really appealed to us was this one called the abstraction and reasoning corpus. It was a benchmark created by the Google engineer, François Chollet. I don't know if you're familiar with him. So he's a research scientist at Google, has been for a long time. Though I guess he recently left too. Go figure. But so he looked at this class of problems called the Vanguard problems. You encounter these in intelligence tests, not artificial intelligence, but intelligence tests. So if you take an intelligence test, they give you these random shapes and they give you 3 examples of them, and they'll say, now guess the 4th shape. And they're so weird, right? They're so weird, and somehow the reason why they're used to test intelligence is that, one, they're trying to make them so that, for instance, no matter your background, your DEI status, you can grok them, no matter how you've been raised, if you're intelligent. So it's kind of a prior free. It doesn't have many priors. It's trying to get at the nature of intelligence, right? And so intelligent people are really good at this. AI systems are really bad at this in the past. There was a breakthrough. So what François did is he made it machine readable. So he, instead of abstract vector shapes, he made it into a grid of colors. And you can look at this as like, there'll be stupid things like, not stupid, but like, oh, the red dot grows, and in the third picture it gets surrounded by a layer of yellow. And so like, if you saw a figure with a red dot, you can guess the rule very easily. And that's kind of in thesis generation. That's kind of what you're doing. You're going, what is the rule that will determine what rule will the market follow in the future, right? And so that's a little bit of what thesis investing is like. And we can argue different points of that, right? So there were breakthroughs in that. They didn't quite shatter the human level benchmark. What we knew about that work is that, and we scoured the research on that and all the leading research topics, is that investing is actually a better domain for that. You can probably appreciate this. It's primarily textual based. Text and the labels, instead of having a binary label, the labels can be expressed numerically quite well, right? Whether it's a price derived metric like a Sortino ratio, a valuation metric like revenue growth or margin expansion, right? So you can build a thesis on all that, or you can go straight to you can write a DCF valuation, right? And that will take into account all the things that you learn, right? Writing a DCF valuation is a hard thing. It's a hard thing. It's more art than science. So the first thing you find when you write DCFs is that they can wildly vary. Have you? Yeah. Have you ever gone through a spreadsheet and written it? Yeah?
Yeah,
You've done that, right?
I've seen, yeah.
How did you feel about that?
You know, it's fine. It's a little overwhelming depending on the type of model you use or the assumptions and stuff.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So ARK has this famous one that they published for Tesla, one of their largest positions. And I nearly threw up reading it.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And the reason why is a spreadsheet is made so you can turn all the dials.
Yeah.
So you can turn all the dials however you want.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's so that is the exact opposite of a scientific process. Like it's like you're not supposed to turn the dials once you've run the experiment, right?
Yeah.
And to give a tool for people to turn the dials is deeply cynical in my view.
Yeah.
So that's not what we do.
Yeah.
I'll leave it. Yeah. What we do, so we look at, let me just talk about the ARK ones since I don't want to I want to hold something close to the chest because we've had problems with this in the past. Is one, there's a generation step, a thesis generation step. So when you look at the ARK problem, this is, what do you think is happening with these weird grids, right? And you can get a language model to do that. And then the second step, which was really genius and also handles a lot of the function calling mess. So there's this mess on function calling. There's some sessions here on it, but it's like, oh, you believe that thesis? Now write me that in code. Write me a DCF valuation. And I'll give you the context. I'll give you the context based on the things you need to write a good DCF valuation. And I'm sure you've done that before.
So is generating the thesis actually based on the model, like the spreadsheet, and then writing the code to generate like future,
to generate the valuation, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you gotta generate a price target, right?
Yeah.
A price is the market cap of the company. The price reflects the market cap, right? It's simply linked via the shares, right?
Fascinating. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Is this available on Amazon? Or is it...
Yeah. Please, yeah. Look it up on Amazon. You can get you don't even want this bulky one. Yeah.
Is there a different copy?
No, there's a Kindle one. That way you don't have to carry it around. Yeah. No, you don't need to lug this. I bring this as it's nice to have a physical copy, but yeah, you don't want to lug it around.
I like it.
Yeah. No, please, yeah. So, yeah, and I think we do reveal a lot, and it'll go down. And yeah, I think we should head out and. But
so a lot of what you talk about is in this book?
Yes. Though this book ends around 2022. So it's just touching about how you write a good thesis.
Yeah.
If you're interested really in this thesis validation portion, I would look at the ARK literature.
Okay.
Yeah, the literature surrounding about the ARK, and best of luck. Please don't hesitate. I'm Leo at Amicus AI. If you ever want to reach out.
Amicus AI, I want to check that out definitely. Yeah, it brings back like